Well, we have a second minister joining us for an interview today. I have to say we're going to the depths of Kurt Michael. We have a slight lag on the connection. Well, hopefully we'll be okay. We have Alf Cannan, Treasury Minister. A year ago, you were giving all the information out in that very first lockdown. You looked very solemn at the time, and rightly so. You didn't know where the end was going to be. Things then picked up, and we all know what's happened since then. Now, where are we up to? I thought we've had a day or two to start crunching numbers. What is the latest you can tell us?
Well, Paul, I told Tim Ward in February, in the budget in February, that the expected expenditure was £200 million at the time, but we were making allowances for that to increase in the event that the situation didn't pan out the way we wanted it to or expected it to. And indeed, that's the case. So costs are escalating again quite quickly. We know that each one of these sort of short circuit breakers, 21 days or so, costs about £20 million. That's definitely going to be the case for March. We expect March actually to come in over £20 million. And I would suggest now the overall total cost of this pandemic will be approaching £250 million.
Now, you budgeted originally when you went to get the money in hand. Is that still enough to see us through this now? Because obviously we presume the end is in sight now, or will you have to get more cash and money and resources?
No, well, we have made provisions. We made provisions in our budgeting, but we've also made additional provisions by, if you recall, last year asking Tim Ward's permission to go and extend a £250 million overdraft facility effectively with the banks to make sure that we did have ready access to cash should things deteriorate to a position that we would have had to have gone and taken some more. So we did dip into that money at the end of last year, but so far our cash is holding up as planned, and the contingency that we'd set aside to deal with matters is what we need. But clearly, if things deteriorate or we can't get things sorted out in the future, then we'd...
Okay, we are fighting a pretty ropey connection, but I think you hopefully can hear me still. I was just saying we're putting in some of those pictures showing the graphs of employment and unemployment more than anything. It has bounced back. Do you feel the economy is robust once we get this lockdown out of the way?
I think if you had asked me in December what I felt the economic position was, I would have been much more buoyant than I am today. I think the fact that we overcame the virus at a relatively quick pace last year, and the 6-week lockdown was managed pretty well. I think the support schemes worked well for that period of time. But now, having come into this year, into 2021, had two circuit break lockdowns in quick successions, a fairly bumpy February for a lot of businesses from a trading perspective. I think we're in a lot more of a difficult situation. We're really focused now. My job is to try and get everyone across the finish line. I hope the finish line is in sight in terms of certainly this phase of the pandemic and the vaccine rollout. We need to get everybody across that finish line and then focus, of course, on regenerating the economy, revitalizing the economy, and working out how we can focus in the future on the key areas for the island.
What sectors do you see as the growth for the Isle of Man going forward?
Well, Paul, we are actually going to commission an economic review now through the Economic Recovery Group to make sure that we're absolutely crystal clear where the key growth for the island in the future is going to lie and where we should be investing our money to make that growth happen and to capitalise on the opportunities. So we will be announcing very, very shortly a partner organisation who will be conducting that review for us. They'll be liaising extensively with industry and business and with the sector society on the island. We hope to deliver that report later this year in time for the new administration to be able to grasp the findings of that report and really determine what a new strategic economic plan is going to look like for the island in terms of where the growth opportunities lie and how best to maximise those.
I mean, just a few weeks ago, we were sitting down talking about the Manx budget. With this lockdown, has that thrown many of your ideas and estimations out the window?
Well, I think critically, Paul, we now recognise that we're going to have to put some more support in to the what we might call the domestic economy, non-essential retail businesses, hospitality businesses, those businesses predominantly who are accessing the support schemes mostly at the moment. They need more cash support to help them, as I said, overcome the difficulties that we're facing because of the two circuit breakers in such short succession. So we've done that. We've brought in an enhanced scheme. We're putting another £7.5 or up to £7.5 million directly into the economy this month. And we're going to carefully consider what we're going to need to do next month as well to ensure, as I said, we can bring as many people with us across this finish line as possible. It's almost a bit like a marathon at the moment. I think we did pretty well for 3/4 of the race with what we've done and put forward in terms of the support schemes. But you're coming into the last quarter, people's legs really are going under them because of the way this is played out. And we need to make sure that we do enough to keep everybody revitalized or stable enough to get us through that next phase, get the economy open again, and then work out what we need to do to take ourselves forward through that particular phase of revitalizing the expenditure, revitalizing the economy, revitalizing our businesses.
One of the questions I got in was asking about people come to the Isle of Man to live, and obviously quite a lot of the time we hear about elderly people coming over and the impact that has because of hospitals and social security potentials and that sort of thing. The question was really saying, what sort of economic level do older people need to come into the island to be self-sufficient to you? In other words, look after themselves as far as paying taxes and using our facilities?
Well, Paul, I think broadly the sort of the nature of the question is about the island's demographics. I think we've recognised for a long time that the demographic challenge needs to be overcome. It's not just here on the Isle of Man, but in other places as well. I think really the focus for us in terms of driving the economy forward is to get younger skills onto the island, to make sure that we are attracting the right people to come and join the workforce, that we're bringing across businesses and individuals who are going to make a proactive contribution. There's always going to be people from across the age range wanting to come to the island. I think very much redressing the demographics will remain a key challenge for the island. There are various ways you can do that. It's not just about attracting people to the island, but making sure that people stay on the island or come back to the island. And indeed, we can make sure that we've got the right social platforms in place that will encourage our families to have children, to stay here on the island, make sure that they've got the right education opportunities and, of course, the right career opportunities. So there's a lot that can be done to redress the balance from that perspective. But it is a challenge. Everybody recognises it's a challenge, and you've got to keep working at that.
A question about hospitality. This person is saying they've been in a year down 25%. They've been open about 6 of the 12 months. You're doing things month by month, which doesn't really help them as much as if you took the whole year into account. Have you got any advice for them?
So I recognise that the support has been delivered during the periods of lockdown. We have sought to also offer support to help businesses get back on their feet in the month afterwards. So salary support, for example, generally has been offered for a month after the initial period when we reopen the economy or reopen that particular business sector. So there has been, and I appreciate that, that doesn't always meet every single set of circumstances, nor recover for businesses every pound necessarily that they're lost. But our focus is providing stability for the economy. And then we're also working outside of that to try and stimulate economic activity through a number of initiatives. For example, enhancing funds like a domestic events fund, trying to drive economic activity through initiatives from the Department of Enterprise, to ensure that these businesses have a real chance to try and recover some of the ground that they've lost. But it is difficult. And also there is some uncertainty as well for government, because we can't always see clearly in front of us in terms of, for example, vaccine rollouts and borders opening, and the impacts of these and when they're likely to happen. So, it's not a clear picture. I absolutely accept that there's uncertainty around, but we are doing our best to ensure that people are getting the support when they need it the most, and then working hard to ensure there's as much economic activity as possible in the period immediately after any reopening of the particular sector or the business world in which they operate in.
And one more on hospitality. This person says you probably, as far as they're concerned, concentrating very much on the hotel side of things, accommodation, and not the rest of hospitality.
Well, I think that's why we've had to move, Paul, in the last week. And on Monday, I announced that we would be enhancing the support that was going through to non-essential retail and hospitality businesses. That they would be able now to claim that a proxy amount based on their rates, on their annual rates bill, that will be delivered in the next 2 weeks. In terms of, I hope the cash will start rolling out within the next 2 weeks. The full details of that scheme will be published within the next 24 hours. So businesses like restaurants, for example, will now get additional funding to help support them through the next few weeks. And of course, we're going to keep a very close eye on the situation. And if necessary, we'll bring forward further support.
Before I go, you've mentioned there's a bit of sympathy for returns, tax returns, VAT returns, I think as well you mentioned this time. Is that still the case? People will be sympathetic, or you will be sympathetic to people who are late?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that we have already determined that returns that were due imminently have now been extended out until May. But I think more importantly, what we are saying to people, businesses in particular, if you're struggling for any reason with any statutory payments, then we're urging those individuals to speak to either the VAT office or to speak to the tax office to explain the situation and try and work with our officers to try and work out how best we can address that to help the business deal with any short or medium term problems that they're facing as a result of the pandemic.
And finally, obviously, this has cost the taxpayer a lot of money. The end is in sight, but is this going to be a really big shock to the system, and you have to go at some point and try and recoup this money from other places in tax dollars?
No, I certainly don't think that's in our plan. I mean, bear in mind, Paul, that the island is almost certain to have a new Treasury minister in the next 6 or 7 months, and a new government which may have a different view in terms of how the government should spend its money and what needs to be done to ensure that is attainable. I think, though, there is definitely a serious question as to whether we should recover some of this money, though, by means of some form of borrowing. The markets are particularly amenable at the moment. Interest rates are incredibly low. And that is a serious discussion that is currently ongoing. The cost to the public purse, as we know, I indicated earlier, this interview would probably be at least 250 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't hit 300 million by the time everything was counted next March and April. And there is an argument to suggest that actually we should sort of rearm ourselves, if that's the right word, to ensure that we've got the capability to invest in the future, but not least because the marketplace at the moment, in terms of the type of borrowing we would be talking about, the interest rates are incredibly favourable.